and welcome to my KIVY series. So I worked a little bit more on the KIVY file that I wanted to understand. It's a big part of the module, and today we're going to try and go through like the basics of it. And for that I'm going to first hand use a new layout that because I want to showcase multiple of them, and we're going to use a simple box layout. So box layout is going to be very similar to the grid layout, because in the end it's basically a grid layout but just with one column or one row. So let's try this out, and we're going to create a class with this box layout, which is going to be our main box class, which is going to be an instance of a box layout. Here we are, and we're going to pass, because the beauty of the KIVY file is that you won't need to put any code in there to place buttons like we did with the login screen, okay? So right now what we did together was this. Little dot missing there. Okay, so we did this little logging screen with an image in one column, then a subgrid within two columns of name and email. You could add your name here, so Johnny, your email there, so johnny.bravo@caramel, see, and click on your button. That wouldn't do anything. But what if I told you that we can do most of those things, like all of them, without using the code, and the code is usually going to be used for more complicated things. So let's try this out by creating in our main folder a new file that we're going to call the same way as our main class, the hello app, and it's going to be called hello lowercase.kv. So usually the standard is for you to name it the same way of what is before the app word in your app name, and lowercase only, then .kv. This way KIVY is going to know when you're starting your hello app class that he's going to have to read through the hello.kv file to know what to instantiate, to know what to do, and place buttons and objects, okay? So now we're creating this hello.kv file, okay, and we've got this blank text file. This is going to work in a way that's very close to CSS and HTML if you worked with that, meaning that what you write down in here is going to affect what's over there, and then you can have IDs and ways to make instances or objects recognized so that you can use them here or use them here. So now we want it to be starting a main box layout, okay? So what are we going to do here? Well, this text file is going to behave in a way that's a little different from a Python code. Usually you're going to start by just stating what is your main layout, the main class you want to follow through to start your app. So in here we want to open everything with the new main box class and not the login screen. So we're just going to write main box here and colon. Here we are. We don't need to explain what's in main box. We're just stating that this is our main page, the main screen that we want to start at when we're starting the app. And then you have a writing system that is going to tell the app how to create any kind of object. So for example, if I want to have some core basic value for my buttons, I can go with this sign, then the button name, close it, colon. Just like in Python, you need to have your tab here, okay? And then I'm gonna maybe wanna have all my buttons written with bold letters. I can have all my buttons have a background color column, which is going to be like, I'm gonna take a color over there like this. Okay, so now I changed the basic value for the button object in my whole app because of that code. Okay, then let's use that system and be like, now I want to define what my main box is. So I'm going to use the same writing system for main box, colon, tab, okay, just like in Python. And I'm going to define this main box, okay. So how do I do that? Well, a box layout is going to have two orientations, okay. So it's going to work in a very simple way, since basically it's going to create boxes either vertically or horizontally. So if you don't say anything, it's just going to pile up with boxes like this, creating like a grid from left to right, where every object you're going to instantiate are going to go in a new column, one after the other, horizontally. If you add vertically, then you're going to basically do the same thing but vertically, creating a grid with multiple rows but no multiple columns. Just easy as that. So I want to say that this is going to have an orientation which is going to be vertical, so open quotes vertical, and I want to have different objects in there, right? So just like we saw before, to define an object and its parameters, you use this writing. If you use it without the lower symbols here, you are telling KIVY to instantiate this object. So what we're going to do is instantiate this object in the main box. So in my main box, I want a label, okay, colon, and then I'm going to define the label. So take this as a call of the function label, and the colon as an open bracket. I go to the line, tab, and I'm going to say what text I want in my label, which is going to be, so text colon is going to be this is button 1. My bad, label here. Okay. Then maybe I want to add something else, right? I want to add a button. So let's add a button, and we're going to say the text is going to be this is button 1. Okay, so now we're pretty okay. Just one last thing we need to do now that we did all this is that we don't need our hello app here to have a build function. This is not required anymore. And let's see what happens now. Well, yeah, we're gonna need to add a pass statement there, because otherwise we're gonna have an indentation error. And boom, it's working. We have this is label 1, this is button 1 as a box layout. What happened there is that we started hello app. There was nothing in the hello app, so when we said my app.run, we just went through the KV file and it saw that we're going to use the main box layout, the main box object, and then it went through what the main box is, and the main box is an orientation vertical and a label and a button. So if I say horizontal and I go back here and try it again, I have this. Okay, so same thing, horizontal, reshaping, writing, and we can see the color of my button that is updated here. Okay, so I don't need to specify the background color of my button every time I add it to any kind of layout. Okay, so that's for my KV, basic KV file abilities. You could do the same thing here for label, right? Like this is how it works. You just add it and you're gonna specify a lot of it. So if we if we have anything that we want to make specific to labels, we can. Okay, so now let's convert our old logging screen into the KIVY file so that we don't need any of those to make it work. And this is going to be just as easy as what we went through. So let's just go and make it. So we had an image, we instantiate a grid with one column, then an image, then a subgrid with two columns. So let's do this. So we know that to specify anything about a layout or an object, we need this syntax here, and we called it a logging screen. So we're going to say logging screen, and then we start to specify what's in there. And what's going to be in there is a grid layout, okay? And so since we're creating an instance of a grid layout, we write down the name grid layout right away, column, tab, and then we specify the amounts of columns, which is the basic information you need when you create a grid. Once you've done with that, you can have more informations about it. And what we want here is that grid to always be the size of the screen, because it's literally the base object on our screen. So we're going to say that the size of it is going to be root.width and root.height. So here, what is root? Well, root of your grid is your main canvas, your main app screen, your main box. So when you refer to the root, it can be that, or if you make nested objects, like for example, if this grid was inside of a main box and it was just the first row of a my main box there, then the root would be the first row of the main box. Okay, so that's what it means. So then what was inside of my grid layout, and it's the image, so let's just call it image source, and we're going to call the source, which was bravo.png. Yeah, that's it. Okay, and now I come to the new line of my login screen, which is going to be two columns, right? And so I need to instantiate a new grid layout. So let's just create a new grid layout. We don't need to name it, we don't need anything crazy, because the indentation here is telling KIVY what to do. So this time we're going to have two columns, and we're going to add a label which is going to say text username. So that's my label. Okay. After this label, what we want to add is my text input. Okay, so let's add the text input. And this text input, I'm going to give it an ID, and this ID is going to be username. So what I'm doing here is naming this specific text input box. So because obviously when you're using a text input, you want to get back the value of the input and use it later on, and so those kind of objects usually are going to need a reference of any kind. So here it's going to be called username. Okay. Then we remember that multi-line is required for this. You're usually going to say it's false, just to avoid having paragraphs in your text input if you want just a username. And when we saw how to make our app prettier, we used various values like padding, and here we're going to put it again, padding y, taking a tuple of two values, and we're just going to use what we had before. Okay, keeping the work here, we're going to finish our app. Remember that we had a system like this, so a main grid, okay, our image of Joni, in the first row here, and then our button there has 2 grids and a send button down there. So now we're getting out of these 2 columns, okay, and we're just gonna go back in the other indentation level to add a button, which is going to be an ID of btn1 for button 1, because I want to do something with a button, just like I want to do something with the text input. So I name it text, and I'm gonna say send data, or send, which is plenty enough. And maybe I want to override the colors I set there, and I could do it here. I could just say like background color here, and then go RGB and put it at 1R, 0 green and 0 blue. And then you have the opacity, so you put it at 1 usually, unless you really want to have some kind of effect on your color. Okay. And you know what? Let's put a label here, and it's going to have the ID of checkout. Then we're gonna make a color be what we had up there, so it's reminiscent of it. And text is gonna be nothing for now. Okay, so now what does that mean? Can I just remove all this? Then let's try it out. What happens now? Well, I go back on my button. Why? Because in my KV file, remember, the first thing I wrote here is the main screen, the main instance in my app. So I need to change that to my logging screen. And now I'm gonna see if I made any mistake creating my layout. And no, it's working. See, I have my red button because I override the main color in my KV file. I have my Johnny, and I have an invisible label with nothing in here. And everything's working out fine. Let's just simply, for the sake of it, remove that line and see the impact. And we have our blue, red, greenish blue color. Don't debate colors with me, I'm bad at this. Okay, so now let's get a little fancy, and maybe let's get whatever we type in here appear in our label down there when we press the button. This is not gonna be super complicated, actually. It's like basic Python, but written in the KV file. So how is this gonna work out? Well, we're gonna go in our button, and what we're gonna say is what you're gonna do when pressing the button, or when releasing the button, even when hovering the button. It's different things you can do in there. So let's get right into it. We're gonna say on_press. On press is going to be what happens when you click it. All right. So we're gonna say that when this button is clicked, we're gonna call the checkout label ID checkout. So on press the checkout label, the dot text, because checkout is the ID of a label, so a label has a text value parameter, and it's going to be equal. And note that you can use equal there because you're writing Python code in your KV file. Okay, so this is not the KV setup, the KV language of the KV file. And you're going to say login as, and now you're going to add naturally the username that you entered. And because we used for our text input the ID username, we can say username, okay, dot text, exactly the same way we did for that. to get the informations from the label there. Okay, and we can even do something fun and say that on press self.background color, so the background color of the object we're talking about right now, is going to change to red. And let's try 0.5 so you can see the difference. Okay, I don't need the tuple here, but it's sometimes more explicit. I still don't know what I like more. Okay, so let's try this out now. So I'm gonna write Johnny in the username box and send. And boom, logging as Johnny, and my button is now red because I'm technically done logging or something, right? So yeah, this is as easy as that. For the KIVY file, that's where I'm at right now. Obviously we can play around a little more with the box layouts and stuff. So for example, just to showcase the nested abilities, let's add something there. We're gonna say that we want to have our main box in this logging screen, okay? I just need to do this. Main box. And I have my main box appear at the lowest row of my first app, meaning that at any point, anywhere, you can have this syntax to nest and nest and nest informations with different kinds of layouts, using a box layout as your main layout to, I don't know, scroll from top to bottom, and then using a grid layout within that for multiple informations, and not even talking of the whole amount of layouts you have, even sliding and other things. My next goal is to go through how to handle multiple pages so that you navigate in your app. So yeah, I'll see you soon.